Welcome to what is essentially day 3 of my time without my wife. And welcome to the diary. This is Scott Johnson, in case you weren't sure. I'm sure everybody who tunes into this knows exactly who I am, because why else would you listen to this? You know what I mean? People don't discover this kind of show. They aren't sitting around going, gosh, I wonder if there's like a niche podcaster guy that I could just, follow his day-to-day ramblings. I wonder if that's a thing I could get. Right? Nobody does that. I do that. I seek out stuff that's different and interesting and, well, I don't know if this is that interesting, but you know what I mean. Things that aren't on the norm. I look for those things when I'm looking for new shows, but I don't think other people do. I think they're going, does that guy I think is already popular, does he have a show? Does that guy who's a comedian already and has, millions of fans coming into it, does he have a show? He probably does. And if he does, well, I'm tuning in because I don't like things that are just average. I gotta have the cream of the crop. That's a whole other thing we could talk about sometime. In my business, people that, they swoop in, they think that they've invented podcasting because they simply brought, a million people in that were already their rabid fans in television or film or something. And it's fine. I understand. This is for everyone. I'm not gatekeeping. There's no gate to keep, and I won't keep it. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to say I've had 3 hot dogs in a row. Not in the same day. 3 days in a row, 3 hot dogs. I don't think that's good for me or anything around me. I'm cracking myself up. Sorry. Yeah, for 3 days in a row, they just sounded really good. And Kim got these really good ones. They were, and before she left, they're called, are they the Nathan's Own or whatever it is? They're the beef ones. And they claim they got like less nitrates and less other, chicken parts or whatever in there. Less, here, the ear of a hippo. Oh, hello. It's flying awfully low today. The ear of a hippo, the anus of a tree frog, and also a dash of, ostrich feather in your sweet hot dog purchase. But I do like a good hot dog, and I dress it up real good. It isn't just bread and a hunk of meat in there. I put other things, I make it work. I make it happen. My milkshake brings the boys to the yard. Anyway, so that's a thing that's going on there. That's a 3-day meal ticket. Just lunches, though. Everything else I've been pretty okay at. I had a salad tonight. And, somehow I've justified that will make it all fine. I was reading some history today. Did you know that Alexander the Great, the founder of the city of Alexandria in Egypt, I guess you know who that is because I just told you, but Alexander, interesting dude, right? There's all kinds of stuff about him. I was just reading. I went a little bit down a rabbit hole on some of that history. What sparked it was I was finishing out some questing in the game Assassin's Creed Origins, and in that game, which is set in Egypt, which is part of Africa, by the way. So when people say, I can't believe they put an African man in Assassin's Creed Shadows, remind them that they already, and then they say, they should just make an African Assassin's Creed. And you can say, well, they already did. And they'll say, what do you mean? Of course they didn't. You say, well, Assassin's Creed Origins is that. And then they'll say, wait a minute, that's set in Egypt, not Africa. And then you can come back with, Egypt is in Africa, dumbass. I wish everyone would have that opportunity. I got to do that. I got to tell a guy that. That was before I left Twitter, though. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure these dummies exist on other platforms. That's not my point. All right, moving on. We talked about that last time. That's not what we're here for today. Today, Alexander. He founds the city of Alexandria. Literally names it after himself. And the reason I know this is I'm playing that game, and I'd completely forgotten at the main menu, there are, you can play the game, set options, do all that stuff. But one of the things you can do right away is enter the tour mode of the game. And tour mode is exactly what you think it is. It's a tour of parts of Egypt, and in one case, the city of Alexandria, and a bunch of history around it. And it is the coolest feature. It's completely separate from the game. So you go in and you choose, right away you just play by ex-wife from the game, but you can choose anybody. There's like a whole list, and some of them are like previous Assassin's Creed heroes, just regular old citizen types. I think there's some like royalty in there from the era. Anyway, you choose one of them, they plop you in the world, and you're running around Assassin's Creed style, but you're running up to these markers as if the world's like a great big museum, right? And there's bustling, there's people everywhere. It's like, the villages are all still teeming with activity and whatever, animals, horses, goats, and all that. But no one's dying, no one's fighting. There's no weapons. You're just running around. You can get on your mount if you want, but that's just for fun. And you can climb stuff and do all the things you normally do. You can traverse the world the way you're used to it. But the point of it is to run up to these markers and essentially take a tour of these locations. So if you want to learn more about the Giza area and the location of the big three pyramids there in Giza, there's a whole thing there. It's only like four little tour stops where you get a bunch of narration, and the narration's amazing. This guy's like, in Giza, the first pyramid took this long to make. It is said that Mohepetep Moompatop was a real dick and treated his people like shiz. Those sorts of things. But obviously, things that are real and also much better words than I'm using. I'm what am I doing? I'm paraphrasing here, but it's really interesting stuff I didn't know, and I like that part of the world. I like that history a lot. I'm enamored with ancient Egyptian stuff. Just the vibe and the tone of it is just so, oh man, I don't know what it is. Just, I know I'm not alone, but I'm sure it's a combination of, hieroglyphics and the weird art style, that 2D flat kind of one leg in front of the other, kind of here's the pharaoh walking, he's killing a goat with a stick or whatever, like those things. Love that art. I love the idea that there would be floodplains and they would grow a bunch of stuff when it flooded, and then when it wasn't flooding, it was drought, and I don't know, and I love deserts. I just love dunes. I love all that stuff. So, and then, the music and the vibe of the place, just so cool. Anyway, I recommend doing that. If you've got that game and you were like, oh, I beat it already, I already uninstalled it, or I bought it but never played it, whatever. Even if you don't want to play it, it's in my top, it's definitely in my top 3 Assassin's Creed games, but it's one of my favorite games ever. And I think part of it is because of this adherence to the history around the game. And they were willing to make basically a walkthrough museum. And it's great for kids, by the way. So if you've got some kids and you're like, I'd like them to learn a little bit about ancient Egyptian society. And also, what did they do when the Romans were poking around? And, how did they react to that incursion? Because in a lot of ways, they were the indigenous people. Well, not in a lot of ways. They literally were the indigenous people, many of them. And Romans came swooping in there a couple of times and said, hey, what if we took over this whole hunk of land and made a city with our leader's name on it? What if we pulled one of them deals, And I learned a lot. And there's a ton. There's and it teleports you to all these places, so you don't have to go running around to find them. You're like, oh, I want to see the one about the Sphinx in that area over there. And it gives you the whole history. There's extra maps and other city layouts and artwork and stuff that you can pop up while you're hearing it. Plus the camera's flying around. It's a beautiful game. So it's, everything's rendered real nice, and it's very, very cool. I wish they would have kept doing that, because when Odyssey came out the next year, Odyssey is also just rich with the visual. And what are they honking at over there? That sounded bad. Usually don't make the dogs bark with a honk. Anyway, that game was like all about ancient Greece and Spartans and, just all that. And they didn't do a tour mode on that game. And I think they missed out. That was another opportunity to do that. Maybe they have data that says hardly anyone used it, which, makes sense. People don't buy video games to be educated necessarily, but I really enjoyed that they put that in there and kind of wish they did from then on. I think Valhalla would have been cool. I mean, they're obviously part of those games that are kind of mythological, and also the whole conceit about, the Animus? Is that what it's called? The futuristic part of it. That's all a bunch of hoke. So you can't really build your game, or your tours around that stuff. But all the historical stuff and the locations and the people involved, that's cool. Anyway, I don't know why they didn't do it again. But as a result, though, I was reading that, or I was watching that, and I ended up going down a big, deep hole about Alexander and his whole thing. I mean, that dude was an expansionist, man. He was all about conquering and taking it over and calling it his, and just keep that going, Like, we get all angry at our current leaders, like, I can't believe you're trying to dictate politics in some third world country to serve your interests. But the truth is, I feel like compared to the past, we can do it with bigger tools, louder tools, more violent tools, I suppose, than we could in the past. But I feel like back then, man, everybody's motivation, with the exception of simple indigenous folks who were just living their lives, farming their land and tending their crops and their animals and raising their families, aside from them, if you were in any sort of position of political or military power, your goal was to just take it all over. Get it all. It's all yours, man. Look at the British. Look at for how many years they tried to do that business. Hell, we're a result of that over here. But that kind of like, colonization, colonial era, and prior to that, just, winning skirmishes and wars and expanding your reach. And at the time, you didn't know how big the world was. Like, Alexander didn't know quite how big things were, but he thought he was getting a good portion of it. And he was, in a way, in a way is the word I was looking for. There's another word. And he did in his own way. No, he did in a sort of way. Getting hung up on how to say that. Yeah, but you know what I mean? I think that's just crazy. And he's, what little we know about his personality and who he was personally, there's just a lot out there. So I'm going to just recommend this. I'm not here to teach you about, Alexander the Great, but I am here to tell you that history is fun. And I love just, sometimes, what's cathartic for me? You look at the world and you go, oh, this is a problem, and that's a big deal, and oh, this election, and oh, gas prices, all the things we think are really important. History is cathartic for me. I love to go back and see it from a perspective of now versus then, and realize that we have made giant progress as a human race in lots of ways. We're not perfect, but we do progress over time. And sometimes there's a lot of blood spilt to progress, but it happens. And being able to look back at it with a dispassionate perspective is really, I think, just good for people. It's good for me. It's good to know and understand history. It's also important to not try to make mistakes that we've made previously. I wish more people would read history that are, in charge of things, because they're the ones we need to learn from history. But also, it's just good to know stuff, It's good to know things. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have full, complete knowledge of things. But just have a good idea of how stuff goes and how it works. For example, knowing that Egypt is part of Africa. That would be a really important thing to know. So when people say, Egypt, that's not in Africa. Yeah, it is. It's in northern Africa. Always has been. Probably always will be. How do you know that? Well, you read. You look up stuff on the internet. You read books. You study. You learn. And I always liked history in school. It was one of my stronger subjects. History, science, and art, those were my big ones. Math, not so much. You'd think with history, or you think with science being in like my top testing scores, I would also have some equivalent math test scores, and no, sir, I did not. I was in a miserable low percentile of my class. I hated math. Ironically, I use a lot of math in what I do now, whether it's like dimensions for commissioned art, or it's knowing what I need for web things, or a little bit of programming I have to do here and there, a little PHP here and there, a little bit of the old database business. Like, it's funny, the math skills I thought I would never use in my life, I actually use. But boy, at the time, my grades are just so bad. But I did great in those other classes. And history was one of those. And as a subject, I excelled in it, but I also really liked it. I loved going. I loved watching historical documentaries. I still do. There's something about reminding yourself that the here and now isn't everything, that sometimes the there and when is as important as the here and now. Or at the very least, it's something that, adds context to your world. And, sometimes they always say the winners write the history books. I guess so, but at this stage, I think we can read about Alexander the Great or Cleopatra or, dozens of other, BCE era stuff and feel pretty good about it. Nobody, this isn't like, World War II where people like to twist stuff to match their narrative today or something. I think enough time passes and you get a pretty clear idea of much of history. But I do think there's a buffer of 300 years or so where people try to use history to their advantage, or try to twist it to their advantage, or retell it to their advantage, maybe. I think there's a lot of that going on. Revisionist history, they say. That's what the kids say. Anyway, these are the things that are on my mind this fine day. Did I even tell you what day it is? It's Tuesday, May 28th. We're just about done with this month, and I'm excited and a little nervous. I've got an upgrade coming for my digital art world, which has for the last, since 2017, pretty much been iPad Pro only. I kind of ditched my Wacom lifestyle because A, it's more expensive to maintain. B, it's not as good. I hate to say it. Apple actually really killed it with this one. I can't even say that I think the iPad's for everyone, especially like people who just need notebooks. I mean, probably don't get one, probably get a notebook. Another cop. What's going on out here? Hear my dogs? Listen. Oh. Actually, I don't hear him now. You can kind of hear him whining. Anyway, maybe you can't. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. But for me and for digital artists all over the place, this thing was a game changer. And in conjunction with various apps, mostly Procreate, people have, it's just been it's changed everything. It has for me. And I've gone a couple of years now without an upgrade because, things have evened out pretty well in terms of capability. But this new one is looking real good as an upgrade. So I keep a little business fund to the side for digital art upgrades, and it's been accruing for a couple of years. So I'm like, all right, this is the year we're doing it. So I've got it coming. The Pencil Pro already arrived, but nothing to use it with because the iPad, the way I configured it anyway, is not getting here until I want to say between the 30th and the 6th or something like that. So hell, Kim might be home by the time that thing arrives. I don't know. But I'm hoping it gets here before that. they often surprise you with early delivery. So at least that's been my experience in the past. And I'll let you guys know what I think, because I'm excited to get my hands on it and to see what that M4 chip is capable of, see what the AI business is about. Mostly, more performance, more layers, more, capabilities, more output, larger formats, like all that stuff's important. And I'll tell you what, if Apple made a 24 or even a 19, let's say a 19-inch iPad Pro, that kind of display would probably be stupid expensive, but I think I would do it because, oh my gosh, dude, I think I would do it. It's my only complaint. I think 13.9 inches is fine, but it could be bigger, And they make it in an 11 and the 13 point whatever now. I still always go with the bigger one, but it is nice that they have a more entry-level one for people who want to maybe spend a little less and aren't so concerned about size. But also the iPad Pro or iPad Air line, the secondary iPad Air line, sounds like a plane. I'm here at iPad Airlines. That one is really good because the price is way, 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 way cheaper, and the Pencil 2 is really good still. So you've got pretty much there what I have now, by the specs anyway. So this new Pro it'll definitely be an upgrade. But anyway, you don't want to hear about that. That's boring. I know this show was originally called Diary of a Cartoonist, and I'm talking about cartoonist things. But sometimes we're here to talk about the world's ails and what we can do to help it. How big a Band-Aid do you have to put on the world's wound? If the world's bleeding, what do? Do you rush to its side and say, "Oh, it's okay, calm down, just hold my hand tight, everything's going to be fine, just breathe, world, breathe, everything's going to be okay. Now I'm going to wrap a tourniquet around your social woe, and then after that, we're gonna stick a thing up your butt, and then everyone will be fine." All right, I hope you guys are having a great day. I'll be back later this week with more, maybe tomorrow even, I don't know. Tomorrow's very busy. Thursday is also crazy. Friday, a little more open, so maybe it'll be Friday, or maybe I'll just squeeze one in. You never know, there's always room. In the meantime, feedback can come to me at scott@frogpants.com, or you can text and voicemail me. Either one. Text is easy, man. Just pull out your phone and call it. 801-471-0462. If you send a text there, I'll read it on the show. And I know I keep saying that, and I haven't done it yet because they're all, somewhere else. I could go pull them up right now, I suppose, but I won't do that because I've already gone 22 minutes with this thing. So the next episode, I will read some of your feedback. How about that? It's been piling up. It's time. Okay? All right. Be good. I'll see you soon. I have been putting my left hand in soil this whole time that we've been talking, and now my hand is black. I will now reach up and push stop on this file, and it is gross. Bye.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Yes. Get more at frogpants.com.